everyone's opinion mattered and everyone's hard work mattered. Senator Cruz knows all of our names, all 18, from top to bottom, and knows my dad, my mom, my sister. I mean, it was very intimate, and I cannot say the word family enough.
We have to find a way to talk and have dialogue and be tolerant between other views.
You have to have open dialogue, and that's where free speech is so important.
Consent's a very important thing, and today in the Me Too movement, it's been very important because I think it's really opened up a lot of eyes.
I think we should get away from this hookup culture and get back to relationships, because when you have a relationship, you have that communication, you have that connection.
If you committed sexual assault, it doesn't matter when it was, you should be held accountable for that. However, we have to make sure that we actually make sure they committed sexual assault, and we have to make sure that all allegations are verified.
They'll put in these programs thinking that it'll help everyone, but what they forget is that the pathway to hell is paved with good intentions.
And I think that's what this whole movement is all about anyways, is trying to be open to ideas.
Welcome to the Liberty Talks podcast with John Douglas and Michael Anderson. Today we're going to be talking to Will Little, political activist and former campaign staffer for the Cruz campaign.
What's going on, Will? I heard you listen to the Liberty Talks podcast, and it's an honor to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So, John, I'm sure you have a lot of questions for Will. As John mentioned, Will Little was a campaign staffer for Ted Cruz, and he is a political activist here in the Houston, Texas area.
Yes, Will. So the first thing I want to talk about is I really want to get into your origins, how you got into really the campaign side of politics and working for Ted Cruz, and how other people could get into that, along with some questions about the campaign. So first, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? What did you do during the campaign? And how did you get there?
Yeah, so let's start here. Originally from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Moved over to Houston, Texas, or Cypress, Texas, to be more specific. I got involved really in an interesting way. I started volunteering with the campaign, and then they had a summer internship that I applied for, and obviously I got the internship, and then from there I just started taking on as many roles as I could, taking on as much responsibility as I could, and finally forced their hand, made them hire me as a staffer.
And so tell us about some of the things you did actually working in the Cruz campaign, and tell us some of your experiences there.
So a lot of what I did primarily was grassroots level. So it's scheduling meetings and finding opportunities for Senator Cruz to go and speak at that would be advantageous for himself and for the community. So when I was an intern, I chipped along and went to a couple events in the 3rd Ward at this great charter school, and maybe it's technically a private institution, but Generation 1. And then from there, we did another event here in the 5th Ward, which was another community involvement event. From there, I kind of learned how to schedule events and kind of how to run these events. And so we would spend a lot of time trying to find the right restaurants or the right venues with the right number of attendees and the right guest speakers and things like that. That way, as many people could listen to the senator as possible to get the message out.
All right, and I want to try to get this in order. Tell us in your position where you were in the pecking order, and how much contact did you have with Ted Cruz?
Yeah, so overall pecking order, I was low. But the coolest part about working on the Cruz campaign, especially being in Houston, is we all had access to the senator. I wasn't blowing up his phone all the time or anything like that, but he would come into the office, pop in. Our office was located fairly close to his house. So whether that was playing pop-shot basketball tournaments in the office or just seeing him make calls to literally anyone, we had a lot of access to Senator Cruz.
And how much contact did you usually have with him?
I would see Senator Cruz at the beginning. We'd see him usually kind of every Friday. He would pop in for an hour or two. And of course, being at the bottom, especially at the beginning as an intern, I wasn't actually like pitching in policy or anything like that. But once again, I mean, just playing Papa Shot or just a fist bump or a handshake in the office and light conversation, but quite a bit.
And you say at the bottom, but I believe there was only 19 staffers for the Cruz campaign?
Yes, so there was 18 staffers total. So I was at the bottom of a relatively small, tight-knit, family-oriented organization.
Even being at the bottom meant that you were still kind of at the top because the bottom isn't that far away from it.
Yeah, I don't know if I was near the top. I wouldn't say that, but it would be like being at a family lunch or family dinner every time he was there, every time his wife Heidi was there. I was never treated like I was at the bottom. I was never told I was at the bottom. And it just certainly wasn't like that. Everyone's opinion mattered and everyone's hard work mattered. Senator Cruz knows all of our names, all 18 from top to bottom, and knows my dad, my mom, my sister. I mean, it was very intimate, and I cannot say the word family enough. That's just how it was.
That's very interesting. Now, I'd be remiss if I did not talk about the Your Work campaign and how y'all actively tried to grab the clutches of victory from what seemed like a very difficult campaigning season. So tell us a little bit about that. Tell us how the Cruz campaign felt about the Your Work campaign. Were y'all worried? Did y'all not care that much? What was the general mood about the Your Work campaign, and did that change over time?
So overall, caring was always at an all-time high. We were never worried. We trust the voters of Texas. We knew we had a conservative message, and we knew that a conservative message fit the voters in Texas way more than anything from whether it was Beto O'Rourke or anyone from the left. We knew that Texans would come out to vote for Senator Cruz.
All right, but Cruz only won by about 800,000 votes, or around that, I believe. So that's not that much comparatively to other politicians historically. So do you think there could have been anything that went wrong maybe, or was Beto O'Rourke just a really good candidate for the Democrats? What do you think happened there?
I think Beto O'Rourke is a really excitable figure, just in general. He ran a really good campaign, a really, really well-run grassroots campaign, in my opinion. And so going up against something like that was a challenge for sure. But I think that's a testament to how hard he campaigned and how well his campaign was structured throughout the entirety of the campaign.
You're listening to Liberty Talks Podcast with Michael Anderson and John Douglas. Follow us on Twitter at Michael4Freedom and at Real John Douglas. Subscribe and listen to the show on Spreaker, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Liberty Talks Podcast is brought to you by all of our musician contributors and musical producers, including Shamari and Jarrell Beats.
Let me ask you, Will, how did it feel waking up every day and going up against an opponent like Beto? I mean, Beto's campaign had many, many campaign staffers in comparison to Ted Cruz, and you even say he was a very good grassroots candidate. So how did it feel going up against him every single day, waking up knowing that you had to beat this guy to preserve conservative values in Texas?
It was really exciting. You mentioned how large Beto's campaign was, and we talked about how our campaign had 18 staffers. They had, I think, 805, 806, some number like that, staffers. It ended up being about 43 to 1. All of us, especially me, but really all of us, I woke up every day really excited. I love to compete, whether that's tic-tac-toe or hopscotch or foursquare with little kids. Like, I want to win. And so knowing that we were going against a large organization was fun. It was exciting, and there's never a dull moment. I loved every second of it.
All right, so Will, next thing I want to get into is tell us about something that's actually happened on the campaign. Why should people go into campaigning? What's in it for you? And tell us how the campaign actually did. How did it work? How did it function as a unit? Tell us more about that.
So overall structure, we had a staffer in all the regions of Texas. So I was South Central, Southeast Texas. We had a strictly South Texas staffer. We had an East Texas staffer, a North Texas staffer. And so kind of the lowest level, we would recruit volunteers to knock on doors, and we would recruit volunteers to come out to events to see the senator and things like that. That would be kind of the base layer of everything. Now from there, we had other campaign staffers like R.W. Bray, who would focus on minority engagement throughout the state. And so overall, we kind of had a few different divisions. We were trusted to do a lot of different things and wear many hats. But from top to bottom, we all had our responsibilities in our respected areas, and we were trusted to take care of them. Now, as for why should someone get involved in the campaign or in campaigns, whether people know it or not, campaigns, obviously elect officials, and these elected officials affect them daily without them knowing it. For instance, at one point, when Congressman O'Rourke was city councilman, not a city councilman, when he was United States congressman, he supported tariffs and taxes on things that one of his plans that he supported would have actually raised the price of gas by 25 cents a gallon. So, right now it's like $1.97. Imagine if that was $2.23. Now, the everyday citizen who goes to work and puts their head down and what makes our state great might not notice that, but it's absolutely being attributed to. So I think especially being young and in college, it's vital to be a part of that process. So to understand that and learn those life lessons.
I want to ask you something that's always kind of bothered me, something I've wondered about, is that Senator Cruz is a minority candidate. He's Cuban. But
Sure.
In the election, he lost a big chunk of the minority vote.
Sure.
Especially among black women. I think they voted for Beto O'Rourke about 95%.
Sure.
Why do you think that was? Do you think that has something to do with Cruz himself, or is that something that the campaign just didn't do a good enough job in? What happened in that arena?
No, I think we did a great job with minority engagement. For instance, you just mentioned black women, and I think those margins were fairly competitive with other Republicans in Texas and across the country. But black men, we had 16%, which was up over 10% from anyone else. So I think we really did a great job with that. But as far as minority engagement, that's something that the Republican Party just has to focus on a whole. That's not a Senator Cruz issue. That wasn't Beto O'Rourke's strong suit. That is something that Republicans have to get involved with, is really educating and telling minorities, whether that's people in the African American community or the Mexican community or Latino population, why these conservative values and why these conservative principles and ideals fit them better than the party of, the liberals and the Democrats.
Right. All right. Well, what do you think the Cruz campaign did right the most? Like, what do you think is the best thing the Cruz campaign did, and what do you think is the worst thing? Where could y'all have worked a little bit harder, or y'all just came up short?
I think the best thing that we did is easily have the best candidate. Senator Cruz is obviously a great man. He's a great family man. He's family oriented, and he treated us like family. And so the best thing that we did was work for the right guy. He loves Texas, and he loved us. And so engaging all these Texans and being a part of that was incredible. It was the best thing. And I think we did a really great job of trying to fulfill the role of 805 staffers as best that we could. And so I think with messaging, with grassroots campaigning, we knocked over 150,000 doors. The last time I checked, I didn't even pull the final numbers. And although, the Aurora campaign knocked on more, obviously, but I mean, that's 150,000 voters that we had individual conversations with at their front door. And not counting even phone conversations or anything like that. We did a really great job engaging everyday Texans. The other thing that I'd say we did a really great job of, and one of my responsibilities on the campaign was at these events, after Senator Cruz will meet literally everyone. Talking about being a great person, he knows better than anyone that everyone is there to listen to him and to see him. And so he will meet, whether it's a mailman or the president of a major gas corporation. He wants to shake everyone's hand and have a personal one-on-one conversation with anyone. And through that messaging and just through that one-on-one conversations, I mean, while I was taking pictures at every single event that I was at, while he's having these one-on-one brief conversations with everyone, there were plenty of times that I heard people saying, hey, we are Democrats, we came to protest, or we came closed-minded and our eyes are open. And we had no idea that you supported, our rights, and that you supported family values and family ideals. And we have to leave the Democratic Party. I mean, at every single event, there were Democrats, whether they were 18 years old or 75 years old or 85 years old with a cane, they were telling us, hey, I thought I was going to vote Democrat, or I voted Democrat my entire life, and I'm not anymore. So overall messaging and just that one-on-one connection that we had with voters, I'd say that was the best thing we did. Now, one of the downfalls wouldn't even really be a downfall of the campaign, but Senator Cruz is actively involved in every Republican issue in the United States Senate and in Congress. There's not an issue that someone wants to talk about or learn about or use as Republican rhetoric that they don't run by Senator Cruz. So there were plenty of times that Senator Cruz was doing his job as an elected official to where he had to be in D.C. So primarily a great example of that is Kavanaugh hearings. There were plenty of events that we had in rural areas of Texas that we wanted to hit on certain days, and we just couldn't because Senator Cruz was tied up protecting what's right and fairness, and had to participate fully in the Kavanaugh hearings as a leader of the Republican Party. So just by the strict schedule that we had, both congressionally and on the campaign, Senator Cruz couldn't be at 3 spots in one day. And so our hands were tied behind our back. As against, Congressman O'Rourke, they were in recess for a month. So he went on a 32-day, stop and go tour all across Texas, and we just didn't have that luxury. We couldn't spend 32 days going everywhere we wanted to because Senator Cruz had to go to work every day. And so that would be maybe not a downfall, but that was where our hands were tied the most, for sure.
So we have a lot of young people that listen to the podcast, a lot of young liberty activists, conservative activists that want to get involved, that dream of one day working for Senator Ted Cruz. How exactly do you think, or what is your advice to these people on how to get jobs like this and work for people like Dan Crenshaw, Senator Ted Cruz, and other folks like that?
Just getting involved. I've wanted to work for Senator Cruz since right out of high school. I worked some nights at H-E-B from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and then I'd go deliver pizzas in the afternoon. And so Senator Cruz actually came out with his book, and I was working a shift at Colhan at the time, and I took my 15-minute lunch break and bought his book and actually had it signed. I kept it on my desk, kind of sentimental about it. But I always dreamed of doing the same thing. I was 18, 19 years old, and I wanted to be involved. I wanted to be around, not necessarily around politics, but I wanted to help Senator Cruz as best as I could. So whether you want to help Senator Cruz or like Dan Crenshaw or any other candidate, whichever party or however you vote, you have to get involved. You have to go knock doors. You have to pay your dues because everyone else did. My first job was knocking on doors. I knocked on over 2,500 doors this semester. And so from there, then there was an opportunity to go volunteer at an event. And after volunteering at an event, you start to meet all these staffers. And I think at the time we probably had 10 or 12. And once you interact with them and they know your work ethic and they know you, when an opportunity arises, they say, hey, Will can go do that. Or maybe like Mary can go take care of that job. And you build up trust with the people who make decisions in that matter. I know the first person who really probably gave me a big boost of confidence was Emily Miller. And she is a superstar. She's been heavily involved in politics for, at least 2 decades. And when I was a volunteer and I was in the office, I was just having a regular conversation with her just about Washington, D.C., because I love D.C., and I was planning a trip up there, and she was telling me all these restaurants that I needed to go to and things like that. And at the end of the conversation, Emily, who I call Miss Emily, so I won't change that, but Miss Emily looked at me and she told me, she was like, you're going to make it. You're going to make it on this campaign, and we're going to be successful, and you're going to be successful because of your attitude and because of who you are. So I'd say the 2 things that you need to do if you want to get involved and be a staffer on any level is introduce yourself, but have that first impression that everyone meets you on, be your hard work.
Well, hey, Will, where can we find you at? On Twitter, on Facebook? Where can our listeners find you to learn more about you?
Yeah, so my Facebook is William David Little. That is my name. My Twitter handle is @WDLittle3. And I'm not the most interesting follow of all time, but I might say something funny every once in a while.
So, guys, that's it tonight. We're wrapping up for the Liberty Talks podcast. Subscribe, like, turn on notifications, all that. Share the podcast out. Thanks a lot, y'all. Have a wonderful evening and a wonderful holiday time.
Merry Christmas.